Welcome back to Grid Drop for episode 2 of the MyTeam series. Today we're going to be racing in Saudi Arabia at the Jeddah Corniche circuit. Obviously last race, points on debut in Bahrain, so hopefully we can continue that streak of points even though we're in a backmarker car, and we'll see where we end up in Jeddah. So here's a look at the new livery we'll be running this season. It's a little more classic, Lotus F1 themed. The last one we used in Bahrain was a little bit more of a test livery. And here we can see the performance index, so we're third to last. Not really ideal, but obviously it's a new season, backmarker car. So hopefully we can put some upgrades on soon that are a little bit more major, considering where we are in the field right now. We definitely need to bring up the overall pace of the car. So we're looking at upgrades right now. Not really going to focus on durability at the beginning of the season. I'm not really too concerned with the durability of the parts. Since we're going to be qualifying at the back anyway, we can always take engine penalties. That's not really too concerning for me. So right now we're going to focus mostly on pretty much every other department, so chassis, powertrain, and aerodynamics. As for upgrades we're putting on right now, I put on a rear downforce upgrade. Right here, put on a rear downforce upgrade. And I unlocked a new chassis upgrade, and I believe we put on a powertrain upgrade as well. So that's three upgrades in those three departments that should be on around before Australia, and I believe one of them is after Australia. So hopefully we see a little bit more of an uptick in performance compared to the rest of the field during that weekend in Australia, and obviously after in Imola. Australia is going to be an interesting weekend. There's a lot of high speed turns with that new track layout in 2022. So hopefully aero and chassis upgrades, weight reduction, and downforce play a role in that. So here we go, starting the race weekend in Jeddah. This is just some practice laps. Obviously, as I explained last episode, my practice laps are usually pretty rough. They're not really polished yet. It's a lot to do with the setup of the car. Just trying to tweak little bits of mostly aero, differential, and not really brake balance or anything like that, because usually I just leave that at 50% pretty much for every track. So yeah, just doing some practice laps, some of the practice programs, trying to maximize all the resource points that we can get, but not really too much to talk about here. As for this race weekend, I'm going to be doing around 99 AI. Usually the AI here is actually a little bit slow, which is surprising considering it's a high-speed circuit, and usually AI are very, very quick around high-speed corners. So yeah, about 99 AI for the race, and quali I believe is 95. Practice is turned down obviously just to get the resource points in faster and complete the practice programs a little bit easier. I do a little bit of practice laps on my own without the programs, so not really too concerned about getting too many laps in during the practice programs. But yeah, so 99 for the race and 95 for quali. So we're going to jump into quali now. Obviously you can see maximum resource points gained on my part. Got some deductions for upgrades in the future too, which is always nice. Two of them are important for right now. It's chassis and aerodynamics. Like I said, durability is not really too much of a focus right now. It will be down the line. So that gearbox deduction is definitely a little bit helpful. Just look at the setup, making some last tweaks before qualifying. The car felt pretty good. Definitely better than Bahrain, which is actually a little bit surprising. A lot less wheel spin. Definitely more control. I felt a little bit of understeer, but not really too detrimental to the performance. So here we are on the first quali lap for Q1. As I was saying, car felt pretty good. The brakes actually felt a lot better than in Bahrain. Obviously, we didn't do any brake upgrades. We don't have those unlocked yet. But it felt a lot more balanced. It could just be setup related. I'm not really too quite sure. The Bahrain setup I have is pretty time tested. I've used it throughout many different career mode or MyTeam saves, and it doesn't really ever seem to give me that many problems. But for some reason, this car with no upgrades was very difficult to drive around there. But it seems a lot more balanced this time around. Obviously, this lap is sped up just so it's a little bit less painful. This is a banker lap, just trying to get some time in for comparison for my second lap. Usually in Q1, if I'm in a faster car, I'll do a banker lap on one set of softs and then reuse those softs even though they're a little bit worn, for my second lap, and that way I save a set if I get to Q3. Obviously, we're probably not going to make it through to Q3, so this banker lap is going to be on new softs, and then the next lap will be on new softs as well. So around the final corner, and obviously this time doesn't count for too much, first lap, but we set a 1:31.2, which actually puts us in P3, which is a little bit surprising, given that kind of a banker lap, not really the best time in the world. You can see I just cut the corner right there. The time was over, it doesn't really matter, heading back to the garage anyway. But yeah, so near the end of the session, I'm P8, which is definitely surprising. I feel pretty comfortable. I'm going to go ahead and do another lap anyway, just in case. When I was looking at the time, there wasn't really too much of a difference between P8 and like P17. There was only maybe 5 or 6 tenths that spread the field out, so definitely wanted to head out and do another lap. This one's really not turning out too good. I'm down right now by a tenth. I just kind of missed the apexes and braking points a little bit, so it kind of put me on the back foot. You can see I just go way over track limits right there, so not really a good lap. I'm not too concerned though. We're on a new set of softs, and there's definitely some time to be made up later on in the lap. We are out of Q1. Obviously a minute 40 to go. Totally bottled it there. Put way too much power down on the exit. Obviously that turn is a little bit banked, so putting the power down sometimes can be a little bit tricky. Somehow we make it through to Q2. Not really sure how that happens. We placed P14 in Q1. Definitely better than I expected. So this is Q2. This is lap 1 in Q2. Definitely feels a little bit better this time around. And so yeah, there it is. We take a little too much curb there. I was trying to go really aggressive with the lap. Obviously it was a banker lap, but just trying to see where the pace of the car is at. And yeah, kind of paid the price for taking too much curb there. Not to worry, we still have another lap. So I waited a little bit until the track was more rubbered up. So this is with, I believe, 4 minutes to go in the session. Ahead of everyone doing their final push laps. The car feels really good though, I have to say. Maybe that's where this car thrives, is kind of high-speed circuits. But yeah, the car feels really good. The balance is nice. Hitting the braking points pretty well, I'd say. I've done a decent amount of practice. There's not too much wheel spin. The balance feels good. There's not too much understeer or oversteer either. Yeah, so this car feels pretty grippy. You can see it right there. I did not anticipate that much grip. We take way too much curb. And wheel spin, and we spin. And we're in the wall on our final push lap in Q2.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So we were out of qualifying 2. Obviously a disappointing qualifying session, making mistakes in our laps in Q1 and Q2. We had rear wing damage there. It would have taken about 3 or 4 minutes to fix. There just wasn't enough time left in the session to fix that before making another lap. So obviously disappointing. We're looking at P16 on the grid tomorrow. Realistically, I think if we finish that lap, we only really could have made it to P12, maybe P11 maximum. So not too detrimental to our race, but yeah, starting P16 tomorrow.
Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, edging out Max Verstappen, who'll start from P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Sainz, Russell, and Sir Lewis Hamilton, and Fernando Alonso, Norris, Ocon, Joe, and Pierre Gasly, Magnussen, Bottas, Daniel Ricciardo, and Perez, Mick Schumacher, Ali, Oscar Piastri, and Lance Stroll, Tsunoda, Albon, Vettel, and Nicholas Latifi. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box. Ant, it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the run down into turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
After the points finished last race, let's aim to keep that momentum going.
So P16 on the grid today for the race in Saudi Arabia. So definitely some places to be made up. I'm hoping we can potentially score some points. Obviously, we scored a single point on our debut in Bahrain. Not really sure still quite the potential for this car. I'm not really sure who we should be racing, who our main rivals are. Obviously, we're third to last in the performance index, but that's on paper it's not really too obvious. That stuff is usually a little bit more clear when it comes to qualifying, but in the races you never know how the AI will behave. So I think potentially we could be looking at P9, P10, around there if we have a good race. One thing that's interesting about Jeddah is there's a very, very high potential for a safety car. Obviously, as we saw in qualifying, it's a very unforgiving track. High-speed street circuit, so one mistake and you're probably going to pay the consequences for it. So if AI start battling and get a little feisty with each other, we could see some safety cars. Hopefully, fingers crossed for a late race safety car. That would allow us to put on softs and kind of catch up to the rest of the field and potentially pick up some major points. So fingers crossed for that. As for the strategy, we're doing mediums to hards. Obviously, as in Bahrain, softs are not really a viable option without any tire upgrades on the car. So mediums to hards. One thing we'll have to look out for is warming up the hards after we pit. AI are a little bit quicker warming up their very cold tires. So we'll see how we do with that. If we're in clear air, we should be pretty good. So yeah, lining up on the grid, P16 obviously. Definitely a very exciting race ahead. Thank you guys for watching if you have been watching thus far. Obviously always a really exciting race around Jeddah, high-speed circuit, street circuit. Definitely very unforgiving, so hopefully we can keep a clean race, stop making mistakes like we did in qualifying. And we are racing in Saudi Arabia, and here we go. Good start, not too much wheel spin off the line, not really getting destroyed by AI coming from behind us. And we go up the inside of 3 cars off the start. So definitely make some contact with Bottas there. We get to stick it around the outside. Hopefully we can make that work. And we're still a little bit behind, but it's a drag race up to turn 3. Hopefully we can get up the inside. And Perez brakes a lot earlier than I thought he was going to. So I have to wave around in the braking zone, try to get the car slowed down enough, which I do luckily, but we definitely lose some time to the pack up ahead. So small mistake on my end, not really too detrimental. Obviously this pack will slow down at some point in the future, and we'll be able to catch up. And Bottas is right behind us. Obviously he's a 10th away, but yeah, pretty decent start so far. Made 3 places up into turn 1 and had that little drag race with Bottas. Luckily no damage from that contact with Bottas. If we had floor damage or damage to the side pod, that could be very, very problematic and our race would pretty much be over. But not to worry, obviously it doesn't feel like I have any damage. Car still feels pretty good. So yeah, just kind of chugging on with the lap. Making up some time to Magnussen. It looks like Perez and Gasly are battling up ahead, so that'll back up Magnussen into our hands a little bit more. Obviously burning a little bit of ERS through this lap, just trying to catch up with these guys after that first little mistake in the braking zone into turn 3. And we go right around the outside of Magnussen, but we can't really make it stick. He actually makes some contact with our left front end plate on the front wing. But hopefully we can set up a move into turn 1 of lap 2. It looks like we can. We're going to have to go for a dive bomb a little bit far back, and we do. We're side by side with Magnussen going through turn 1. We squeeze him out into turn 2, and it looks like job is done. So that is P12 for us on lap 2. Let me take a look at the replay here. Yeah, so we go right up the inside of Magnussen and squeeze him out into onto the curbing in turn 2. It doesn't look like that would be even a penalty in real life. I don't think we squeezed him too much. We kept some racing room, but I think he actually went maybe a little bit deep into turn 1. So pretty good move by us. Obviously back up into P12. 2 places away from points, which is really, really surprising and really great news. So definitely points on the table here, and I go over track limits. They're not really too sure why I didn't get a warning for that. I think I'm going to turn on strict corner cutting for this MyTeam save. In Bahrain I wasn't really getting corner cutting warnings, and there was definitely some times I went over track limits, so I think I'll turn on strict for the future, but I'll give you guys an update in whatever video I do that on. Not really too sure if it's a problem with my game or just the normal corner cutting is too lenient. Obviously rules are still on, so not really too sure. But anyway, so about to start lap 3, keeping Magnussen behind, definitely burning ERS now. Trying to keep up with Gasly and Guan Yu Zhou and Perez. It looks like Perez got through from behind the Alfa Romeo, and oh, they're battling. They're battling into turn 1. So Perez was on the outside, and Guan Yu Zhou must have gone for a move into turn 1. And I think we have a replay. Yes, we do. So it looks like Guan Yu Zhou went up the inside, and there's contact between Perez and Guan Yu Zhou. Hopefully no damage for either cars. I don't think there would be damage for Perez. Obviously his wheel went into the side pod of Guan Yu Zhou. There could potentially be some front wing damage for him. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and see if Guan Yu Zhou starts losing some pace. So anyway, on lap 3, DRS is enabled this lap, obviously, which will definitely help us out.
Okay, there's a fault with the DRS. You will not be able to open the rear wing. We're working on a fix. Stay out for now.
Never mind. Not great news. We've already burned a lot of our ERS to try to keep up with the pack on our first 2 laps, so not really great. Luckily these guys seem to be battling ahead, so at least we can keep up with the pack that way. But we're definitely going to need to save ERS, and we get spun by Magnussen. He hits us in the rear left, and we are spun on the last turn of lap 3. So we can see here on the replay that Magnussen went for kind of an ambitious move up the inside. He hit us in the left rear, we spun out. Luckily we could save it. But in that we got passed by Ricciardo and Bottas, who are going down the main straight now. And we are shaping up a move up the inside of both of them. And Mick Schumacher is coming up the inside as well. And we're late on the brakes. That's 3 wide into turn 1. Barely staying back from Ricciardo. And we let those two fight it out behind us. Later on the brakes, and we get that move done. Really, really solid move. We can see here 3 wide into turn 1. We squeeze Mick Schumacher out on the inside. And Bottas just on the outside of 3 cars naturally loses that fight. We can see from Mick Schumacher's point of view, we're a little bit later on the brakes and a little bit more controlled on the brakes, and he gets squeezed out by Ricciardo actually, which helps us out a lot. That definitely helped me out. Luckily we could get that move done, and that kind of is a little bit of damage limitation from that incident with Magnussen. Luckily we could save that spin, obviously, and now we're only Ricciardo is between both me and Magnussen, so definitely some damage limitation by making that move there. If I had waited to do that move, I think our race would have been a little bit worse. So hopefully there's no damage. The car feels a little understeery. I quickly checked the front wing and I didn't really see anything obvious on the front wing. Obviously no orange or red on the damage indicator for the MFD, so not really too sure if that's kind of a placebo effect or the car is actually understeering and there is some front wing damage. So as for my race, DRS is still offline currently, which is really not ideal, especially considering that I could potentially have front wing damage. I'm not really feeling the effects of anything too major yet, but I'm not really quite sure. Obviously, like I said before, I didn't really see anything pop up on the MFD. So right now I'm just going to try to stick to these guys, potentially save ERS, but I also want to stick with them a second in case that DRS pops back online. So unfortunately it's going to be one or the other, and we can see here we skip a couple laps ahead. ERS percentage is still very low, even lower than before, but DRS is back online, which is good. So we now have DRS to fight with these guys. Now is the time I can save ERS, but unfortunately we have to box soon, so I want to get in front of these guys as soon as I can, and try to get into some clear air so we can make sure that they don't jump us in the pits if we have a slow stop or something like that. So definitely trying to stick with these guys, but it looks like Ricciardo's pulling away, which is making me wonder if Magnussen has any type of front wing damage from our incident. It looked like a little bit of carbon fiber came off his front wing, so we'll check right here.
Less than a second separates you. They're on old mediums. Their tyres are 6 laps old. We think they've got one more stop. The car ahead has damaged the front wing, but it seems fairly minor.
So that's why Magnussen is falling behind Ricciardo a little bit more than expected. He's actually putting up a good fight, but from that earlier replay when he spun us out, you could see a little bit of carbon fiber come off of sort of the middle of his front wing. So I'm just checking for damage right here, and it turns out that we do. We do have front wing damage to the left side of our front wing, which I think came about from that incident with Magnussen. I'm not really too sure because I didn't feel too much damage on that first lap after the incident, but it slowly crept up on me, and I've noticed more and more understeer. And you could probably see it throughout these corners. When we were checking on Magnussen's front wing damage, I was understeering like crazy. I was missing all the apexes. I'm hitting them now, but I'm having to brake a lot earlier in order to do so. So I feel like I'm losing time, but the good news is that Magnussen also has some front wing damage, so we can at least keep him close to us for now. And we can see that going down onto the main straight, we're catching Magnussen, and I don't think we're close enough to go for a move. But we're going to try for maybe around the outside and see if that will work. And it sort of does work. It turns to the inside for turn 2, and now it's a drag race. It looks like Magnussen's winning that drag race, but we stick it to the inside. We're going to catch him sleeping here. We go up the inside of turn 3. Wow. Not really a good overtaking part of the circuit, but we make that move work. Luckily, Magnussen has front wing damage. Obviously, I don't think that move would work if he didn't, given our damage. So we can see from his point of view here that he was definitely caught napping. He wasn't really expecting an overtake there. So definitely an opportunistic move, but it worked for the best. And luckily, no incident there, or no further damage to our front wing. So now we're just pushing on. Obviously, this is our box lap. Yeah, this is the lap where we're going to come in. So Magnussen is most likely going to come in right behind us. I'm mostly curious to see if Magnussen is going to change his front wing or not. If he doesn't, he'll probably have about 5 or 6 seconds on us when we exit the pits. So hopefully he decides to change his front wing. I'm not really sure how he feels about his own pace right now. It doesn't look like there's too much damage from that replay, from that incident. So if he does, we can at least try to keep him behind in the pits. And if not, we're going to have to let him pass us in the pit lane. And he's actually passing us right now into the last corner. I didn't really have too much ERS to fight that move with. I'd rather save it for the rest of the race, considering that he might have a front wing change as well. So worst comes to worst, I'll come out maybe 4 or 5 seconds behind him. So here's Piastri for the first time in this race. He's kind of in no man's land. He is currently in last place. The only person behind him is Carlos Sainz, who had a mechanical DNF, but he is fighting a Williams for second to last place. I assume that is Nicholas Latifi. So into the pits. It doesn't look like Magnussen is getting a front wing change, so he is going to come out way ahead of us here. He doesn't get held up by anyone else either, so it's going to be Bottas and Magnussen ahead of us in the pit lane. So we're going to speed this up a little bit. Surprisingly, the warm-up for the cold tires wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I was just a little bit more cautious than normal. I braked a little bit earlier. I was lighter on the brakes to avoid some lockups. And we minimized the mistakes, so not as bad as I thought it would be. Out of the pits, it's a little more forgiving, I'd say, in Jeddah. There's a little bit of wheel spin, but luckily we mitigated that. By now, the hard tires are almost warmed up, so yeah, just checking on Magnussen ahead, but he still has that same front wing, so he must still have some type of damage. So that definitely gives us hope in order to catch up with Magnussen and overtake. Obviously, we're still kind of low on ERS. These base model cars with little upgrades are really quick to burn through ERS. Even if I press it for half of a lap, it goes down to like 50%, and it's really hard to recover it. I think that's the biggest problem, is recovering ERS rather than using it. So here we can see Piastri coming into the pits for his first pit stop, first and only pit stop, and he'll most likely be going into hards if I could guess, and yes, he is. So he's on the same strategy as me. So back to our race, lap 14, hards are warmed up. Bottas has slipped away, and Mick Schumacher is fighting Magnussen, and that's why the gap is falling so quickly. They're going side by side through a lot of corners. Mark told me on the radio that Mick Schumacher has some engine problems. Obviously, it's not a failure or a DNF, but he has something that's plaguing his engine. So he's probably down on power, maybe on exits or on straights. I'm not really quite sure, but There's something wrong with his engine that's causing him to go so slowly. And it's perfect that he's in front of Magnussen because he's slowing him down for me to come take those places. So hopefully we can capitalize on these slow corners and slow straights that Mick Schumacher is producing. Magnussen looks like he's sticking up for a move around the outside, but it doesn't really look like it's going to work. It looks like Schumacher has too much traction there. So hopefully he keeps backing up Magnussen into our clutches. And it looks like it's working out really well. Magnussen is backed up way into us. Schumacher's going very, very slowly, especially through these curvy S's and these straights. And we're going around the outside, sort of the inside of Magnussen, and going up the inside of Mick Schumacher. Can we get 2 cars in one? And we can! That was an unbelievable move. They got 2 cars in one corner. We can see from a helicopter shot. That was a crazy move. We force Magnussen to the inside and then grab the inside of that corner and take it away from Mick Schumacher, who still has damage and is still holding up Magnussen. So we can see from Magnussen's point of view here, we just kind of slip right in between them and then brake a little bit later and kind of force him out. And Magnussen is still behind, which is perfect for us. We'll be able to build a little bit more of a gap to Magnussen and let Mick Schumacher slow him down a lot more. So now we have to focus on Bottas. Right now he's about 3 seconds ahead, so it's definitely doable. There's 10 laps left. Unfortunately, a little bit low on ERS, and there's no one to get DRS off of in front. So it looks like Guan Yu Zhou and Ricciardo are battling a little bit. They keep swapping places. So ideally, Ricciardo and Guan Yu Zhou will back up Bottas into our hands, just like what happened with Schumacher and Kevin Magnussen. So we'll see. It was definitely pretty sweet to get some revenge on Magnussen for spinning me out on lap 6, I believe. So that was nice. Obviously, it looks like Magnussen got through, so we got to keep an eye on him, make sure he doesn't sneak up on us. But we have a pretty decent gap to him. He's out of DRS range, obviously. So coming up on Bottas now, gap is down to 2 seconds. Gap is coming down. I don't really think that's because of Ricciardo and Guan Yu Zhou. They're still a little bit ahead of him, so he might just be a little slow pace-wise. We're burning ERS, obviously not too much ERS to work with, but trying to manage it the best we can. And here we can see Esteban Ocon having a mechanical DNF, and he's ahead of us, so that's another place for us. So that means we are now going to be in P12, which is pretty hopeful. That means 2 places more. We can get some points again, just like we did in Bahrain. So hopefully we can keep pushing, manage the ERS well, get some DRS off Bottas, hopefully save ERS, and keep trucking along. So gap is coming down still to Bottas. It's lower and lower every lap. It's probably about a tenth or 2 a lap at this point. Lap 20 out of 25. Got to be a struggle to get to Guan Yu Zhou unless he starts battling with someone ahead, but it looks like Ricciardo got through and has somewhat of a gap if you look on the mini-map. So I don't really know if that's going to be on the cards for today. So it looks like passing Bottas and Zhou will be the maximum for today, but that will still be points. That'll be P10, so that could be our 2nd point finish in 2 races in a back marker car. Definitely some exciting stuff ahead if we can get both of these guys. Yeah, coming up on Bottas, gap is going down really effectively, which is really good. He's just slow on pace. I'm not really too sure if he has some damage or something, but you can see how much time we make up in that first braking zone. Coming up again, we're probably going to make up some more time in this braking zone. It looks like we could even potentially go for a really deep dive bomb, but I decided against it. It's probably not really worth it to risk getting damage on lap 22 of 25. So we're going to stick behind him, potentially DRS train him, but I don't think he has the pace to keep up to Zhou. So we have to pass him as soon as we can if we want to potentially get points in this race. Managing ERS still, really fighting through the gears, trying to keep traction in these kind of slippery S's of Sector 1, but still keeping good pace to Bottas, even though we're so low on ERS. But we're going to have to definitely go for a move quickly, because if he's slow on pace, we need to get through Bottas as soon as we possibly can in order to catch up with Guan Yu Zhou and score some points. So getting really close to Bottas's gearbox, almost looking directly at it, and he gets a little bit of a better exit into these S's. Holding off on ERS for now, kind of using it very sparingly, especially in high gears. I find that that's when ERS works the most. Getting really close to him here. DRS is working, thankfully, so we can keep up with him that way. but we're going to have to really, really utilize DRS and ERS on this back straight and then the first main straight to see if we can get a move into turn 1. So we're getting really, really close into the final corner. About to turn into lap 23 of 25. So time is running out to get to Guan Yu Zhou. He is still 2.7 seconds ahead, so that would have to be 2 seconds a lap in order to get even closer. We go around the outside of Bottas, a very, very aggressive move to the outside. Give him a little bit of room. Don't squeeze him out too much. I think we pretty much knew we had that place secured. So we can see a replay here. We definitely gave him a lot of room, went way to the outside, hugging the wall, and definitely gave him a lot of room. Didn't squeeze him out too much. I think the braking was just superior, and I knew my exit was going to be better than his, given his line. So I wasn't really too concerned about him sneaking back up the inside into turn 1. So on lap 23 now, trying to catch up with Guan Yu Zhou. Still 2 seconds ahead. Definitely going to be a struggle. Lap 24 now, definitely not really making up as much ground as I'd like to. P11, definitely a good recovery given that spin and starting P16, but there are points on the cards if Guan Yu Zhou can make a mistake. So we're going to stick to him as much as we can for now. ERS is getting dangerously low, not really that much pace left in the car. The tires are starting to drop off. Starting to feel a little bit more slippery. Not as much grip. Yeah, so it's a little bit of a struggle, especially through these curvy sections. You can see a little wiggle right there on the back tires. But trying to go as quick as I can. Bottas is actually catching up a little bit, mostly just because of the tire problems I'm having. So lap 25 now, Charles Leclerc is the winner of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. But we're still trying to push, but at this point, tires are too far gone, there's no ERS, so we're just trying to keep Bottas behind. Damage limitation, secure P11. It'll still be a good finish, no points obviously, but pretty good recovery from that spin on lap 6 from Magnussen. We beat Magnussen, we beat Bottas, P11 from P16 on the grid with an incident. So pretty pleased with that one. I thought it was a really good race. Unfortunately no safety cars, I think that would have really benefited us, but overall a really, really good race. A lot of good battles, a lot of good overtakes, so I'm very happy. P11, and here's the constructors and drivers standings. Piastri still has yet to score points. He didn't do too well in that race. I believe he finished P18. So we need to up his stats if we can in the activity. He finished P19 actually. So not great, not a great showing from Piastri, especially there's 2 DNFs. So that's second to last considering the rest of the field. But anyway, really great race. I was really pleased with that one. The car performed really well. It felt very balanced throughout the entire race. There was not ever too much oversteer or understeer. Obviously, when we had that front wing damage, it felt a little understeery, but we got that front wing changed and got back into the race. I think if we didn't have damage from that spin with Magnussen, that incident, I think we probably could have pushed and got past Guan Yu Zhou. I mean, obviously we lost about 6 or 7 seconds doing that front wing change. So, yeah, there was definitely some more points on the table in this race. Unfortunately, we got caught up in an incident, but overall, a really good race. Thank you guys for watching if you made it this far. Australia for next round, we got some upgrades coming on the car. It's going to be very exciting. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. If you've made it this far, I appreciate it. And I'll see you.